What's up, everybody? I'm Wes Goldberg, and welcome to RealGM Radio. On today's show, we are continuing our division preview series with a look at the Central Division. Joining me today are my friends from over at the Locked On Podcast Network. It'll be Danny Cunningham and Haize. Danny covers the Cavs. Haize covers the Chicago Bulls, so they are perfect guests to help break down what is one of the more competitive divisions, I think, in the NBA. The Cavs should finish number one, but after that, it's pretty much anybody's guess. Full disclosure, we recorded this episode before the news of Max Strus's foot surgery was reported. Sounds like he's going to be out 3 or 4 months here. Shouldn't really impact the conversation all of that much, but it's a good one. Hope you enjoy. Let's jump in. It is Real GM Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. The best way, as always, to support the show is to subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast app to get the show every week. This is our Central Division preview. I'm here with Haize from Locked On Bulls and Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs. We're going to be talking about the entire division, including some of the biggest moves from the offseason, which teams we think are going to make the playoffs. Here's how they finished last season, just as a quick refresher. Cleveland, Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit, and then Haize's Chicago Bulls at the end there. And then obviously the Pacers make it all the way to the NBA Finals. Cleveland was the number one seed in the East. They didn't make it quite as far. Milwaukee had a very interesting offseason that I'm sure we'll debate here on today's program. But let's just start at the very top. Who got better this offseason? Haize, what do you think? Who got better when you look at these 5 teams?
I mean, the Cavs definitely got better. I think that, them adding Lonzo Ball is going to be really big for them, especially if he's able to be healthy in the playoffs. I love what they have there. The Milwaukee Bucks got better based off on paper than what they were last season. I still don't feel the best about necessarily the roster. And then, of course, the Detroit Pistons. I like the Detroit Pistons roster a lot. The Malik Beasley thing, I wish there was more of a resolution to that. I wish I understand why there isn't, but I still think that they've gotten better as well. Pacers have gotten worse. The Bulls have done what they've done every offseason. That's stayed basically the same.
So, Danny, he says Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland all got better. Do you agree with that?
I don't think I'm there. I think that there's a case to be made that no team in the Central Division got markedly better. Like, I think the Cavs are different, and I think that could lead to more postseason success, because I think you look at the roster and Isaac Okoro goes to Chicago, and Okoro is a terrific defender, but he's a one-way player, and Ty Jerome is on his way out, and he had a fantastic season offensively, but he's a one-way player as well because he cannot defend anybody. They bring in Lonzo Ball, who's a two-way player, but he's got a ton of injury red flags. They bring in Larry Nance Jr., who is a little bit of an older at this point, third big, and he's a two-way player too. So they're certainly different, but I do think that we need to see I think that they could be a team that takes a bit of a step back in the regular season and takes a step forward in the postseason, which is what matters there for the Cavs. I think Milwaukee is largely the same as they were last year. Like, they have the best player in the conference, I think, by a pretty significant margin, and nobody looks at them as even a remote threat to win the conference. I think Detroit is about the same when you think about Malik Beasley. Of course, that's not their fault with him dealing with the off-the-court stuff. Tim Hardaway Jr. on his way out. Jaden Ivey, you presume, will be healthy coming back this season. Adding Simone Fontecchio. Like, I think they're just largely the same team that they were last year, and they might be better because Cade Cunningham takes another step forward. But I don't know that I look at any of the teams based on off-season moves they made. Like, I think there's a case to be made for the Cavs. But I look at the rest of them, I think the Central kind of looks the same as it did, except for the Pacers. Obviously, no Haliburton, a huge thing for them. Losing Myles Turner, a very big deal. They're going to take a big step back. Everyone else, I kind of think, is about the same.
So I think that's kind of where I landed on this when I was looking at everybody's off seasons. Maybe somebody got a little bit better, maybe somebody got a little bit worse, but for the most part, I think everybody's just sort of the same. The biggest thing is obviously Haliburton being out for the year. That's obviously the biggest thing in the division. If I had to pick a team that got better, I think I would go with Detroit. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of their offseason moves. I like Caris LeVert and Duncan Robinson for them quite a bit. I think they got better on paper. I think losing Malik Beasley is fine when you replace him with Duncan Robinson. I think adding Caris LeVert is potentially really big. And then you get Jaden Ivey back and healthy, presumably. He was really good for them before he got hurt last year. But outside of just like obviously the natural improvement, which is going to happen, you got a guy like Cade Cunningham, who I think is a top 15 guy. Ron Holland looked great in Summer League, and I'm a big Ron Holland guy anyway, so I'm already sort of predisposed to be rooting for him anyway. But he looked good. I think my most intriguing player is also on the Pistons, but I'll save that for later. I think they're going to be really good. My hot take right now, and I did my over-unders with Matt Moore earlier this week. My hot take is that the Pistons are going to win 50 games. I think they can win 50 games in the East. I love this team. I think they're going to be really good.
I don't think that's a stretch. I think when you look at the rest of this Eastern Conference, like the goal for Detroit, and I think that they should probably be in this same bucket as like Atlanta. And I think they're even like, I would have Detroit ahead of Milwaukee right now in my personal Eastern Conference power rankings. Like their goal should be, we should be able to get the 4 seed, because I do think that you're going to look at Cleveland is going to win a lot of regular season games. They're going to be really good. New York is going to win a lot of regular season games. They're going to be really good too. I think Orlando, if they stay healthy, and they won a good amount of regular season games last year, despite the fact that Paolo Banchero missed 6 weeks, Franz Wagner missed a bunch of time. Like if that team stayed healthy, of course, adding Desmond Bane, they should probably be the 3 seed, at least as of right now in August as we record this. But I think Detroit's goal should be, we should have home court advantage in the first round. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I think 50 wins get you there. I think that's a very fair goal for them to have too.
Hayes, you said Milwaukee got better. What was it? Is it just the Turner from Brook Lopez upgrade at this? Like, what is it that you liked about the Bucks offseason enough to say that they got better?
I do like the Turner. I think the Turner and Giannis fit is going to be better as well than what the Dame and Giannis fit was. Not to say the Dame necessarily was bad there. But I wasn't very high on Milwaukee at all last year. And I just think having Myles Turner there and what he's able to provide is going to be better. You still got Bobby Portis there. I think the Bobby Portis minutes are going to be important too. But that Myles Turner acquisition, I really like the idea of Myles Turner and Giannis and those minutes that they're going to play together a lot.
So I had them down as had gotten worse.
Really?
And it might not be fair. I guess it depends on what you look at as with Damian Lillard. Like, were you just kind of writing him off for this year anyway, so it doesn't matter? He did play 58 games for them last year, and now they don't have that. And they basically replaced him in the starting lineup with Kevin Porter Jr., who was pretty good for them, in the playoffs and down the stretch. He had his moments, but like if I'm just taking 58 games of Damian Lillard out of the equation, I think this team got worse. But maybe you're already assuming that was going to be so because of Damian Lillard's injury.
That's the curve that I graded it on.
Yeah, so that's a good way to put it. So you're kind of grading it on a curve there. Let's talk about the move that intrigued us the most from the offseason in this division. I have the Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro trade. This is the perfect 2 guests to have on. Like, who won this trade?
I think it's the Cavs because I think that the Cavs got the player with the better contract, and they also got the player that can play, I think, more minutes in the postseason. Now, every time I bring up Lonzo Ball on my podcast or on any other podcast, you have to mention the caveat: if Lonzo Ball is healthy, because he has played 70 games in the last 4 years, and that is obviously not a lot of basketball games. But if he is healthy, I think he's somebody that can be a factor both offensively and defensively. Isaac Okoro was not ever going to be guarded in the postseason. We've seen him play in the playoffs for the last 3 years, and not one of the teams that the Cavs have played in the postseason has seriously defended Isaac Okoro. He is always the guy that's left open, and he is too apprehensive offensively to shoot the basketball. So that is something that just really drags the Cavs offense down when that was the case. While Lonzo is not necessarily ever going to be confused with Ray Allen from beyond the arc, the way that he can create for others means that he's going to put pressure on defenses, and that is something that's a really big deal. So I look at that and say, okay, I think on paper, if healthy, they got the better player. And Lonzo also has a team option for next year and is making less money right now than Isaac Okoro is. So the Cavs were able to, especially when you're in the second apron the way the Cavs are, they were able to, at least in my opinion, get the better player, not have to give up any draft capital, which I was very surprised they were able to trade Isaac Okoro without needing to attach at least a second round pick, and got a guy that I think I consider the better player. Like, I look at this as a big win for the Cavs.
Hayes, would you agree with that?
I agree with what he like, but that's a major caveat. And it's with Lonzo, it's not even just the knee that kept him out for multiple years. Like, it wasn't even that last year. It was the wrist, which he almost ended the season twice. And so it's a big if Lonzo, like, yes, if Lonzo's on the court, what he does, creation and rebounding and getting out in transition, I think he could be really good for Evan Mobley next year. I think that's great, and it's a good acquisition. But I don't think it was a bad acquisition for the Bulls either. We needed a player that's out there on the court more. We needed a player that was a better defender. And when you look at the shooting between Lonzo and Isaac Okoro, it's been about the same as far as percentage wise. And so I don't think the Bulls really lost much. in that. And, Danny says he's surprised that they didn't have to attach draft capital. I'm surprised we didn't have to attach draft capital to get rid of Lonzo, to be 100% honest with you, with the major injury concerns. Like, Lonzo's a really good guy, and he's going to be good for that locker room. But I think for the Bulls, it's important for them, with the evaluation that they're on. We got 6 players under contract at the end of the season, to have players that could be out on the court so they can continue to evaluate this roster. I think that's what Isaac Okoro is going to help them do. So I think it's a good move for both teams. If Lonzo's healthy in the playoffs, the Cavs clearly are going to win that, because that's how much Lonzo can impact the game of basketball. He had the best plus-minus on off-court numbers by the Chicago Bulls. The problem was he was just off the court more than he was on.
Yeah, when you talk about default settings, I think the default setting for every Chicago Bulls trade evaluation is the Bulls lost the trade versus whoever they were trading with, right? Like, we just assume that they're going to lose. But and that's what I thought when I saw this. Like, wow, Lonzo Ball, we all know what he can do when he's out there. The question is, when is he out there? And the more I thought about this, the more I think it was basically just a wash. I think this trade made sense for both teams. I actually think both teams were winners. I think this was a win-win trade, because Cleveland loses Ty Jerome. They don't want to pay him the 3-year, $28 million contract that he got in Memphis, which I think was a really good contract with Memphis. But obviously, Danny, you talked about their cap restrictions that they're dealing with right now. So you get Lonzo Ball in there for at least a year. He's got the team option on that second year. If they want to walk away, they can. If not, bring him back on an expiring $10 million contract. That's fine. That's good business for Lonzo. And I like Lonzo Ball a lot. And I think that he makes a lot of sense for a Cavs roster where you could see him playing with Garland or Donovan Mitchell and just like getting it to him, just feeding it to him in a way that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have to do as much of that as way as Garland does. Garland's catch and shoot 3-point numbers are awesome. He just never gets to shoot those kinds of shots because he's always on the ball. So if Lonzo can unlock some of that stuff, that's the kind of thing that can make a difference in a playoff series, right? But he's got to be healthy. And Okoro, I still sort of like him. And in Chicago, he kind of plays a position of need. He's like an innings eater for them, if anything, right?
Man, listen, I know this isn't a Bulls podcast. We have a Bulls podcast named C-Red Fred. He called the Isaac Okoro trade that it's going to be the best trade in Bulls history. And that's where I'm just like, when Danny said I'm the biggest Isaac Okoro guy, I was like, no, believe me, I know I could send you a link.
What is the greatest trade in Bulls history? What would you consider that?
Dennis Rodman was technically a trade, right?
Rodman was technically a trade, right?
I got to be Rodman. Yeah.
It's not going to be Isaac Okoro. I can tell you that. It might work out fine. And I like Isaac, and I think Isaac is a good basketball player. He's not what the Cavs needed in the postseason. Like, I think, the talk about there are 82 game guys and there are 16 game guys. Isaac Okoro, I think, is an 82 game guy. And when you are the position the Chicago Bulls are in, 82 game guys are fine.
Exactly.
Because we're not playing 16 games. We can't worry about the 16 games.
You need 16 game guys. And the Cavs over the last 3 years had figured out he's not a 16 game guy.
Yeah.
Who is the most interesting, most intriguing newcomer when you look at anybody in the conference? There's, again, not a ton of movement here in this division. Is it Myles Turner? Is there another name that we're thinking about?
I think it's Myles Turner, and it's less to me about Myles Turner because I think we know who he is. Like, am I intrigued by Myles Turner, the basketball player? Like, do I think there's more stuff to uncover there? Not really. I think the fit with him and Giannis should be pretty good, but I look at the rest of that, and I think what they are missing, what either could make that pairing really good or could lead it to be underwhelming, is I'm not so sure that Milwaukee has the star to stir that drink, right? Like, if you look at their backcourt, Cole Anthony, I think, leaves some to be desired. Kevin Porter Jr. is not a guy that I look at and say, yeah, I would be comfortable counting on that guy for 82 games and then the playoffs as somebody that can be a lead guard for the next team. Yeah. Not what pops up when you think of Kevin Porter Jr. Reliable, not coming to mind there. So I just look at, yes, Myles Turner in a vacuum, really good player. Myles Turner and Giannis together in a vacuum, pretty good pairing. But then I look at the whole picture there and I'm like, for this to work, I think they need some different things elsewhere. And I don't know how they go about making that happen.
What do you think, Haize?
Yeah, I think it has to be Myles Turner. I think like just the fact of how he got there, even in Milwaukee, makes it interesting enough, and that fit between him and Giannis is gonna be. And I think the situation in Milwaukee is already probably the most interesting ones to watch outside of on the basketball court, because if Milwaukee really done enough, like this thing with Giannis and him potentially, asking out of Milwaukee, like it's not for sure yet. Like they're going to be reevaluated every 90 days. Like that's basically what's going to happen here. So Myles Turner, that acquisition working out, I think is really important to a lot of what Milwaukee's hoping to do in the future.
It's fascinating for 100 different reasons, right? Milwaukee buys out Damian Lillard to create the space for Myles Turner. You wonder, okay, well, had you bought out Damian Lillard earlier in the year, could you just have re-signed Brook Lopez and then use that money that you spent on Myles Turner at a position in need in the backcourt potentially? Like, there's other versions of the way that this would have played out if they knew that they were going to buy out Damian Lillard in the first place, which obviously they didn't until Brook Lopez signed with the Clippers. So then they go and get Lopez's replacement in Myles Turner, who's younger, I think just a better basketball player than Brook Lopez is at this point. What's that look like, though, with people in Milwaukee are starting to talk about Point Giannis? I'm like, Point Giannis is really cool and everything, but Giannis, when he's at his best, is also the roller. And it just feels like they need to have somebody else do that. Maybe it's Cole Anthony, maybe it's Kevin Porter Jr., maybe it's Ryan Rollins. Like, they're just going to do this by committee, whatever it is. Maybe they could put it all together. I still think they're going to win a bunch of games, by the way. Like, the Bucks, they still have Giannis and they still have Doc Rivers. And for all of Doc Rivers' playoff shortcomings, that guy wins something close to 50 games every regular season. Like, that guy's a regular season wins machine. So is Giannis. Like, that team was super underwhelming last year. They won 48 games. Like, they're just gonna win games. But in terms of their overall upside, like their ceiling, I have my questions. I'm starting to come around to the Myles Turner thing, though, even though we kind of all laughed at it because they had to pay Damian Lillard to basically go away in order to sign Myles Turner. And I'm coming around to all of it, like everything in totality, just because, okay, if you don't do that, you're at risk of Giannis asking for a trade. Okay. So now now you've got Giannis, but you have no way of building around him because you're paying Damian Lillard $20 million a year in dead cap hit. Okay, fine. And by the way, Giannis can still ask out. But if Giannis asks out, you're going to stink no matter what. So I'm almost like, who cares about paying Damian Lillard $20 million in dead cap? If you're going to be bad, you're just going to be bad. It doesn't really matter what we're doing there. So it was definitely a Hail Mary, but it was one that I could live with.
So the way I look at it is the best path forward for Milwaukee, I don't think was this. Because if Giannis was going to ask out, he was going to ask out. And I don't think that maybe this is the case, but I don't think so. Like, I don't think Myles Turner, who is a fringe all-star, is somebody that should be looked at and say, yeah, that guy should decide, like, whether or not he's in Milwaukee or not, should decide whether Giannis, who is an all-time great, wants to stay put or wants to go. Like, if Giannis wants to stay, he wants to stay. If he wants to go, he wants to go. The best path forward for them should have been a gap year. Like, it should have been, Giannis, listen, we are not going to be a championship contending team. We need to find a way out of some of the bad money that we have, of some of the older players that we have, because that was a very old core around him. And I do think that one of the original sins here was when they traded for Damian Lillard, they traded Drew Holiday and didn't get younger. Like, they have been an old team around Giannis for quite some time. And I think that they needed a couple years to recover from that. Last year could have been year one of that. Instead, they traded for an older Damian Lillard. Did not work out in the years that he was there. And I do think that if you would have looked at this as Milwaukee taking a gap year, they're going to win 35 games. Maybe they'll be a play-in team, but they're another year closer to having some flexibility financially, and they can start to build around Giannis to kind of give him a second championship window instead of trying to extend this little tiny sliver of a window that I really don't think any of the three of us believe is actually open. I just think it pushes the second era even further away.
That might have been the idea. And then they realized we can get Myles Turner, and they made this dramatic move maybe to shake things up and get Turner. Haize, what do you think?
I think part of it is that, like, Giannis doesn't want to leave. Like, I fully believe he wants to stay in Milwaukee. So you make moves, and he's looking for anything to give him an excuse to stay in Milwaukee for now. And I think that that's a big part in this. Now, if they for some reason crash and burn and they win something like 40 games next season, then I think Giannis may have to wake up to the reality here. I agree with you. I think at this point, if I was in Milwaukee, I'd sit down with Giannis. Well, before the season, I sit down with Giannis and just I would have moved. Like, think about the future of your franchise. I would have gave serious consideration of moving him, but the franchise doesn't want to move on. Giannis doesn't want to move on. So you do this as a stopgap. But I think it's gonna happen. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen at some point.
You think that Giannis gets traded or asked to trade?
Yeah, it's gonna happen at some point. Yeah.
And it probably happens while Myles Turner is under contract.
For sure.
And so you're sitting here with Myles Turner under contract, Damian Lillard's dead money. Again, my case is you're going to trade Giannis, you're going to stink anyway, and you're probably going to stink for a decade. So what's the difference about who's on your dead cap or not? It's just you kind of have to make this Hail Mary throw when you did it. But let's talk about most intriguing rookie, which is going to be a short segment because only one team took a rookie in the first round in this entire division, and that was Haize's Chicago Bulls. Noah Senge with the 12th overall pick. How How did his summer league go? What's your impression of like what when they drafted him? Were you surprised? And what are sort of your thoughts about him now?
I was surprised in the sense that I think that there are players on the board there that fit more with what this team needs right now. But I like the pick of Noah Essengate.
Like who? Who are you kind of looking at that point?
I was looking at for them. I was looking at Danny Wolf, Thomas Sorber were the two that I was really looking at for the Bulls. And I think for that center position with Vooch's expiring contract, that would have been important. That would have made a lot of difference for the Bulls with the future of the center. But I understand the Noah thing. Like we've seen it in the NBA, like having versatile forwards is like kind of like the new thing. And so potentially you're looking at Noah Essengate and Modest Buzelis turning into your forward duo of the future. One more defensively gifted, the other more offensively gifted, and you're hoping that they're going to work out a balance there. They're interchangeable. They can play either forward position. Noah Essengate, I think when you look at rim protection, getting out in transition, especially if Josh Giddey ends up staying here, that could be a weapon for them. So I like the pick of Noah. I know Billy Donovan, and it's going to be the first 35 games of the season before Noah probably even hits double-digit minutes. How he finishes that season is going to depend on how much he learns over the course of the season.
Is the idea with him to play him alongside Buzelis eventually? Like those are going to be the two forwards. We're just going to have these two combo forwards out there?
Yeah, I think so.
Danny, there's a bunch of young players in Cleveland that we could talk about here. They don't necessarily even have to be rookies, but they've got, there's some minutes to backfill right now in Cleveland. I think there's going to be some opportunities.
Yeah, I think Jalen Tyson is at the top of that list, and he was not a first-round pick this year. He was a first-round pick last year. He was taken number 20th overall out of Cal, and he played a little bit. He was somebody that was kind of, playing garbage time minutes. There were a few instances during the season where he would get a spot start here or there with certain guys in and out of the lineup, and he played okay. I don't know that he necessarily hit every goal that the Cavs had for him, but he's somebody that the team raves about his work ethic. He had, I thought, a really, really good summer league, even if he was a little bit outside of what role he normally is in, because he had to be a little bit more ball dominant in summer league than he will be playing alongside the likes of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and even Evan Mobley to that point too. But I look at him as somebody that they are going to need to find some minutes on the wing at some point. And if Jalen Tyson this year can be their 10th man and show promise that, hey, next year, maybe he could be the 8th guy on the team. And maybe after that, he can find a way to be a 5th starter. Like, I think that kind of is the track that they would like to see him on. They just need to see it a little bit more in the regular season. And there should be a bit of an opportunity for him to do it this year.
So before we move on to the season preview part of this, we're recording this August 11th. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to run this yet, but there's still some outstanding business for both of these teams that we're talking about. Specifically with Chicago, though, I mean, the Josh Giddey thing is still unresolved. You also mentioned Vucevic, and I had a note down. I wanted to ask you about him, Haize. Is the idea that they're going to try to explore trading him on this expiring? Like, I know there was like a back and forth about whether or not they would consider buying him out and things like that, but where do things stand with Vooch?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to look to move him at the trade deadline. I think that's just what makes the most sense. Like, as much as Vooch is a defensive liability, he's still walking 18 and 11 on really good efficiency. Like, you know exactly who Vooch is. I think for any teams looking for big man depth or center production and have really good defense around him, they'll get a heck of a player there. I'm not going to count out either the Bulls doing something similar to what they did to Lonzo. They shopped Lonzo at the trade deadline, didn't find a deal they liked. They extended him, made it more easy to move him in the offseason. I would not be surprised to see something like that with Vooch happen if a deal doesn't materialize at the deadline either.
Is there a Simons for Vucevic trade that sends Vucevic to Boston? Because I look at the team that could use Vucevic, and the Celtics are the obvious one to me.
I wouldn't mind it at all. I think, if you can get a player like Simons isn't perfect and the fit there, they still have to figure out a spot for him in the rotation. But if you can get young talent back, much younger than Vooch is, that would be a great deal for the Bulls. And I think that was actually rumored at some point in the offseason before he was traded to the Celtics.
It's one of those like connecting dots type of deals that just make way too much sense in the trade machine and then ultimately never end up happening because it never works out the way we think. But with Giddey, though, like what do you think happens here?
I think they're going to settle on a shorter deal. It's probably going to be either 2+1 or just an outright 3-year deal, much less than the $30 million Giddey and his agency were looking for, probably around 22, 23-ish million. And I'm not necessarily mad at that either. Like, Giddey had a very hot finish to the season. Overall, he was really good creation-wise, but there were times at the beginning of the season he wasn't we didn't play him in the fourth quarter because his defense was that bad. So I think Giddey has a lot left to prove. And the Bulls being a little hesitant to give him a full 5-year deal at $30 million, I understand it. So I think ultimately he's going to be a 3-year deal between 20-24 million is probably what's going to end up happening there.
Danny, what do you think about Josh Giddey?
I think that'd be a good deal for the Bulls. I look at him and I think he's a useful player, but I don't think that he's a player that if you have him on a $30 million a year contract, I think that, and listen, the Bulls have a long way to go, I think, before we look at them as a championship contending player or a championship contending team. But I do think it's hard to build that type of team when you have a player like Josh Giddey, who does some good things, certainly, but you can't overpay that type of guy. Look at what the Houston Rockets have done with their negotiations for contracts over the last 18 months or so. Like Jalen Green did not get the max. Jabari Smith Jr. did not get the max. And I understand you're not talking about giving Josh Giddey a max deal here, but I don't think that organizations can just cave and give players exactly what they want. And I look at Josh Giddey and I think that this is a great start for Chicago to be able to say, hey, we're not going to just cave and overpay for guys that don't have any leverage. Like in these contract negotiations, where else is Josh Giddey going to go out and get $25 million? Where's he going to get? Who's going to give him $30 million? Nobody. So why should the Chicago Bulls? And I think if they can come and settle with him around $22 million per year, I think that'd be a great win for them.
Yeah, that's the one part about this is I wouldn't even mind paying Giddey the Jalen Green contract, $30 million a year on a shorter term contract. It becomes expiring relatively quickly. Like it's movable. Like we just saw Houston move Jalen Green for Kevin Durant, but it's movable. The problem is that in this restricted free agent, the problem with for the player is that with this market, they have no leverage other than they could just hold things up, which is not really an issue for Chicago. It's more of an issue with Kuminga and the Warriors right now, where everything's just being held up. But that's really the only sort of leverage that they can use, and I guess Giddey's trying to do that to a certain extent. Obviously, it's just not as dramatic. I would be fine. I think Giddey's a really good player. He's one of those typical guys that like we focus so much on what he can't do as opposed to what he can do. And even when they traded the Caruso for him, again, default setting, Bulls lost the trade. I was like, I kind of like this for Chicago. They're getting the 6th overall pick from a few years ago, who was clearly not useful for Oklahoma City anymore. It was a talent play for a team that just needed talent. And, maybe you could argue that they should have traded Caruso earlier or whatever, but just, in a vacuum, I didn't mind the trade for them at all. And then I thought he was really good for them last year. So I like him for them. I just, I figure they'll probably hash things out. I agree with Haize.
I think the thing with that, though, is that the Bulls in that situation, I think a lot of people felt as if they had leverage. Like you knew that Oklahoma City was going to trade for Josh Giddey, and in a vacuum, Giddey for Caruso. Not a bad trade for either side. I think it's fair to say it's worked out pretty well for OKC too. It just always feels as if, the Chicago Bulls could have maybe gotten a little bit more than they did. I think that is kind of why the default setting is the Bulls lost the trade. It's not like they're getting smoked in deals. I just think that they've kind of not maximized what they could be getting back in some of these.
Yeah. And they have lost a lot of trades, to be clear.
That's true.
I'm not trying to defend the Bulls too much.
They've not been winners in the trade market.
But I liked Giddey. All right, let's look ahead. Season preview here. We're going to start with our rankings. How do we think the division is going to finish at the end of the year? So, again, last year it was Cleveland at the top, followed by Milwaukee, Indiana, Detroit, and then Chicago. I think it's going to be Cleveland at the top again. No debate, right? Then I think it's where things get interesting. I don't think you could put the Pacers number 2, considering that Haliburton's out. I've got Detroit number 2. I've got Milwaukee 3rd. I've got Indiana 4th. And I've got Chicago 5th.
I have the same exact order. I think the Cavs, again, and we don't know what they're going to be in the postseason. And I said, maybe they take a bit of a step back in the regular season, but they won 64 games. Like they are going to be I think 57 plus win team next year. Maybe they get to 60, maybe they don't, but nobody else in the division at least in my opinion, is capable of matching what their regular season win total should be. I think Detroit, like you, Wes, I don't know if they quite get to 50. I think they have a chance, but I think they'll be like 48 plus. I don't think Milwaukee has that type of ceiling, and maybe I'm lower on Milwaukee than the consensus. And then Indiana, we don't know what they're going to look like, but they're not going to be very good without Tyrese Haliburton and Myles Turner. And then I think that Chicago is finally going to do the thing that Chicago should be doing, which is, hey, just go be bad for a year and try and get some lottery luck. And instead of just trying to be around 35 to 37 wins, win like 25 games, please.
Hayes is shaking
It'll
his
be better
head.
in the long run for you.
It'll be better for you.
It'll be better for you.
AK's, it's never going to happen. We're going to aim for that middle every single time. So I mean, I have pretty much the same. I do think Chicago wins more games than Indiana this year personally.
Okay.
Other than that, I have the exact same. I actually think the Bulls are going to get 40 wins this season. I think that we haven't gotten worse. We've actually gotten better, and I think it really is going to determine by how much of that Kobe and Josh Giddey chemistry was legitimate. They spent a lot of part of the season. Some of that still with Zach LaVine there trying to figure out the chemistry between those two. If the way that they finish the season, if even 70% of that is who they can be for the majority of the season together, I don't see any way they don't win more games than what they did last year. Not a whole lot, but I think that they could be flirting around 500 this year. And so that's where I see the Bulls are going to be this year. But other than that, everything the same.
I ran into this kind of thing every time we were doing the over-unders for the Eastern Conference was they're playing a lot of Eastern Conference teams because they're in the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of bad teams in the East this year. And look, I think this is one of the best divisions in basketball. It wouldn't shock me if all 5 of these teams were over 500 or like 40 plus games. That's totally in the realm of possibility here. I think the Pacers are going to be better than people think, even without Haliburton. I know losing Haliburton is huge. I'm not saying that they're going to be like a contender, Danny, but I think they'll be 500 at least.
If they kept Turner, I'd be there with you. But like even Nembhard, Nesmith, like they missed a lot of time last year. Pascal, we've seen what he was when he kind of became the number one over in Toronto. I think a big part on how good the Pacers can be this year is how bad that front line depth hurts them and how good Ben Mathurin is, because he's going to have a lot of more opportunity next year.
And Rick Carlisle has confirmed that he will be starting, that Mathurin will be in that starting lineup. So, but
I think that the Turner move is the one everyone's going to look at there as to, why they might take a step back. I think the move, and obviously like the Haliburton Achilles is the reason why they will take a step back and will not be in the finals next year. I'm going to go on record and say that the Pacers will not make the finals next year.
Right, let me mark that down for my bold prediction of the show.
Yes. Thank you. I need somebody to make sure that when that comes true, they know I said it in August. But when they made the trade with the New Orleans Pelicans to swap picks, to give up their pick this year and to get their pick back in next year's draft, I think that they understand they are going to take a step back. And I think that having their pick allows them to say, you know what? Let's just make this a gap year. Let's be a lottery team. This is a 1-year thing. 12 months from now, no matter what happens, we will be talking about the Pacers differently than we are right now because Tyrese Haliburton is going to be healthy and back. So why not make this year about trying to build for the future and trying to give Tyrese Haliburton maybe a really good young teammate, and by missing the playoffs, you can do that. And I kind of think that's where the Pacers are going to go.
There's a great argument to be made that that's exactly what they should do. But Indiana's a little bit like Chicago in that I'll believe that they actually tank when they do it. This is a team that very much values getting into the postseason. They like getting those ticket sales. They like getting that gate fee. They like all of that stuff. They traded for their pick back in a genius move, but it was very fortuitous in a weird way, because it happened before the Haliburton Achilles tear. So it's not like they had the Haliburton Achilles tear and then made the trade planning to tank. They did it sort of in a weird, backwards way, where now it does open up the opportunity for them to tank, most certainly. I just don't see the Pacers doing it because they just typically don't do it. And I look at this depth chart, and this is why I say I think they're going to be better than people think. Yes, there's no Haliburton. Nembhard's still really good. That guy is a good basketball player. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to make a push for an all-star this year with the ball in his hands more. You still have TJ McConnell coming off the bench. You've got Mathurin, who's going to be, he's one of the most interesting players in the league this season. I mean, what an opportunity for him right now. You've got Ben Shepherd still coming off the bench. You still have Aaron Nesmith. You still have Johnny Furphy, who they like. Pascal Siakam's an all-NBA guy. You have Obi Toppin backing him up. There are definitely questions at center. I like Isaiah Jackson. We'll see how he comes back coming from this injury. But they add Jay Huff, who I like. There's other players there. Jarris Walker should probably get some more opportunities this season. There's still strangely a lot of depth. And while their center position is a concern. I'm less concerned about it when your perimeter defenders are Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, and Pascal Siakam. Like those guys are going to be able to, create a defensive shell enough where I don't think that the center position is going to be as problematic as it would be for, say, like the Boston Celtics, who just don't have those perimeter defenders as much anymore. And then Rick Carlisle is going to coach the snot out of this team. Like, you just know that. And I don't know. Again, I'm not going to say they're going to win 50 games. They're not going to be as good as they were last year. But if they won like 42, 43, 44 games, that wouldn't shock me either. Something like that. Any other of these teams that we want to debate? I mean, do we all have Detroit in the number 2 spot?
Yeah, I do.
I think that they're going to look pretty, and it's funny because I do think that there are a lot of parallels between where the Pistons are right now and where the Cavs were a couple of years ago. And obviously the head coach of the team is the biggest parallel there is there, with JB Bickerstaff being in charge in Detroit now. I thought the jump they made, maybe not from 14 to 44 the way they did, but I thought them being a respectable team last year was just the easiest prediction to make. And I think that they're going to be a team that surprises people, very similar to the way that the Cavs surprised some people the year they acquired Donovan Mitchell. Because you look back at what happened then, they went from the year before Donovan Mitchell was in Cleveland, they went from 21 wins, I believe it was, to 44 wins. They weren't as bad as Detroit was, but they had a similar jump. And I would expect that the Pistons are going to take another step forward, kind of similar to the way the Cavs did.
I'm with you. Like I said, I think they're going to win 50 plus games. I think you've got Cade, you've got Jalen Duren. I think that's just a pick and roll that it already works. We know that. There's enough veterans there. I think they're well coached in terms of regular season teams. I think that JB Bickerstaff knows how to coach a team in the regular season. And I love all of their young guys. Like, I am all in on Asar Thompson, almost as much as I'm in on Amen Thompson. I'm all in on Ron Holland. I think Jaden Ivey being healthy is going to be huge for them. I think a lot of that stuff just works. And I like their additions. I think Karis LeVert is a winning basketball player in regular season games. You could argue that the Hawks won the Karis LeVert for DeAndre Hunter trade last year, given how well LeVert played for the Hawks down the stretch. I don't know that I would go that far, but
I wouldn't go. I mean, DeAndre Hunter, obviously he had the hand injury in the postseason that I think slowed him down a little bit. I would have liked to have seen him play a full postseason with the Cavs without dislocating his shooting thumb. But the way he shot the basketball for the Cavs, he was well over 40% in the regular season with them from beyond the arc. I look at that, and I think the Cavs maybe missed a little bit of Karis LeVert's playmaking, but I think that Hunter's just such a more consistent shooter and a bigger, better defender than what LeVert was in Cleveland.
I had another thought on that, but I already forgot. Oh, I like Duncan Robinson for them. I think that more than makes up for the Malik Beasley loss. Duncan Robinson, his movement shooting, playing next to Cade Cunningham, is going to be huge and underrated. I think he's going to have a better year in Detroit than he has had in Miami in a long time, because I think they have the personnel to utilize his strengths, but also cover up for some of his defensive deficiencies. Okay, how many teams do we think make the playoffs from the Central Division this year? And I guess for the sake of defining this, play-in does not count.
So are we talking top 6, or are we saying, hey,
and then
the Chicago Bulls finally did it. They got through the play-in. They made the
teams
playoffs
that make it through the play-in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I will go. I think I'm still going to go 3. I think that the Bulls will probably be a play-in team. I think Indiana might be a play-in team, but I don't know that either of those get through. I think Milwaukee could be a play-in team, but if Giannis is in the play-in, I'm going to bet on Giannis getting through the play-in. I think Detroit will be a top 6 team, maybe even a top 4 team. And I think that we can all probably agree the Cavs are going to be a top 4 team as well.
Yeah, I agree there. I think the Cavs, Detroit, Milwaukee, they all make the playoffs one way or another. I almost went 4 there, but I think 3 is the safe bet. 3 teams make it for sure. This is the only division. If the Bulls would have won one more game last year, it would have been the only division in the East where all 5 teams won 40 games. So I think 3 teams is a safe bet there.
All right. Well, you guys both said 3. It's my podcast. I'll be bold. I'll say 4.
Wow.
I think it's Cleveland, Milwaukee, Detroit all make it. And let's just say one of Indiana or Chicago make it through the play-in tournament. One of them ends up at the 8th seed. Why not? Make a bold prediction here. Maybe not somebody, as bold as Danny's.
In the East, man, somebody has to be 8th.
Yes, exactly.
Like in the West, it's like the race for 8th. And maybe this is more accurate with 10th. But like, as you look at the bottom of this conference, it's like, well, somebody has to finish 10th. Like somebody has to be be in the play-in.
Well, to me, I think that there's 7 pretty clear playoff teams in the Eastern Conference that I feel good to okay good about. And then you kind of hit this zone of the Indiana, Chicago. I still don't know what to make of Boston. Like maybe they could probably still be in that play-in mix. Toronto maybe has a big wins jump. I could see something there. And then the Philadelphia wild card, who knows, right? Like maybe they get a healthy year and they're able to make it into the playoffs. But it's kind of, they're all sort of in that mix. All right, what is a player that we're going to think about differently this time next year? So this is a super general concept of a question. You could take this in any kind of way, really, but just a player that we're talking about differently this time next year. Does anybody jump to mind?
I have a couple in Cleveland, but I think it kind of depends on what you think of them right now. Like I think Darius Garland could fit this mold. I think that we would think about him differently right now if he were healthy in the postseason. The year that he had, especially the first half of this season before he started dealing with injuries, if you go back and look at his pre-All-Star break numbers compared to his post-All-Star break numbers, and he was injured in the second game after the All-Star break, and his numbers were just not very good after that, but he was having such an awesome season. I think if he has a healthy postseason, people are going to talk about him differently. And the other one is Evan Mobley. Like I am of the belief that entering last season, I thought, okay, Evan's probably going to be a guy that makes a few all-NBA teams. You know, maybe he wins a defensive player of the year. Maybe he doesn't. He's going to be a perennial all-defense guy, though. Like, I did know that about him. But after the jump that I thought he made offensively, in addition to winning defensive player of the year, like, I now look at him as somebody that I think has multiple first-team all-NBAs in his future. And I might be a little bit early on that, but I think if he has the year that I would expect him to, a lot more people are going to feel the same way that I do right now about Evan Mobley 12 months from right now.
You can make an argument that he was Cleveland's best player last year. And if, Donovan Mitchell was on first team all NBA, if you thought Evan Mobley was their best player, maybe you would put Mobley in Mitchell's spot. Maybe that's something that could still happen. I don't hate it. I think that's totally a fair point. Haize, what about you?
I'm gonna go safe bet here. I think Cade Cunningham. Like I know that you already mentioned that he's a top 15 player, but I don't think that that's like unanimous now. I think this upcoming year and the playoff run that they're probably gonna go on, that people adamantly know and realize that Cade Cunningham is one of the top 10 to 12 players in this league next season. I really think he makes that type of leap next season.
If the Pistons win 50 games like I think they're going to, he's going to be in that conversation with Jalen Brunson. Right? Of just like a guy who you can just heliocentric, run your offense around him. You could put a pretty good offense to an elite offense down out on the court, and most importantly, win a bunch of regular season games. I'm there. I'm going to go, well, before I tell you mine, why not Buzelis there, Haize?
I think so. Buzelis, I think it's going to come in year 3. Okay. Buzelis, I think he's still going to be probably third, maybe even fourth in the offensive pecking order with Vooch still there for most of the season. And everything that Buzelis did last year was either at the rim or the three-point line. This is going to be the year where he's able to do more off the dribble, and I think they're going to trust him a little bit more. But I don't think he really makes that leap to change his perception into year 3. So
that's a fair point. I thought about putting Nembhard here. Like I said, I think he's going to potentially be an all-star next year. I just don't know that we're going to talk about him differently because then Haliburton comes back. So we might have we might have a different conversation about like, well, now what do you do with Nembhard? Do you try to move whatever? But ultimately, it's still going to be Haliburton's team. The guy ended up settling on here with Asar Thompson.
Okay.
It's a good pick.
Played pretty good last year when he was healthy. He was really nice. He played really well in the playoffs. He finishes at the basket at a really high rate. I mean, this guy is shooting like 67, 68% at the rim. I mean, those are like big man numbers for a guy who's not a big man, obviously. Now, the shooting still has to get better. He needs to improve from the free throw line, three-point shooting. The corner threes aren't even there for him yet. Like, the shooting needs to come a long way for him. But I think offensively, this guy has a ton of potential, a ton of like play finishing potential, which is obviously what you want next to a guy like Cunningham. Cunningham's going to start all the plays. He needs play finishers like Jalen Duren, like Isaiah Stewart, and I think like Asar Thompson. And then defensively is where I think he's better on defense than Amen Thompson. I mean, wow. I think he could potentially be better on that end than him. He is a like following you in the mirror type of defender. Like you can't move past him. He's just in front of you. He averaged 1.7 steals per game last year in like 22 minutes per game. So, and a bunch of blocks. I think that he's got legit potential to average like 2 steals and a block per game this year with more minutes. And I think he's going to be an all defensive team, like perennial all defensive team guy. And I think he'll make it this year. I think the world of him. And I think we're going to end up having the conversation with him similar to what we're having with his twin brother right now of, oh, this is one of the top 2-way guys in the league. Somebody who it would have to be like you're getting Shea back to trade him. Like it would have to be just something crazy in terms of like trade value. I think we're going to start having that conversation like we're having with Amen Thompson. We're going to have that conversation about Oscar Thompson this time next summer. I think the world of him. I think he's got a ton of talent. I think he's got a ton of opportunity, and I love the team for him.
I don't necessarily know that I disagree with the defensive stuff because I do think he's a fantastic defender. I need to see the shooting come along. Like I have more faith that the shooting is going to get there with Amen Thompson, even if I don't, nobody's expecting these guys to just be knockdown shooters. But I look at Amen Thompson's future, and I kind of think that guy could win an MVP one day. And I don't see it with his brother Asar. I think he could be an all-star, but I still am going to have more stock in Amen Thompson.
I do too, to be clear. I agree with you. I just think that the conversation we're having will be similar to the conversation we're having now with Oscar. Unless we're having the conversation about can this guy be the number 1 player on a championship team, which maybe we are having that.
I think we'll have that about Amen. I don't think we'll have it about Asar. But he doesn't need to be. He's next to Cade Cunningham. And I think that one day Cade Cunningham could be the number 1 player in a championship team.
Yeah, I don't see it for Asar the same way you do. I'm all in on Amen Thompson. Like Matt Moore talked about me on Locked On NBA today because I'm hugely over on Amen Thompson. But Asar, he has a lot to show before I'm as high on him as you are. Not that I'm down on him. I just don't see him in that same light quite yet.
All right, you guys will be wrong. I'll be right, and then you guys can thank me then at that point.
Sorry, I'll be right about the Pacers not being in the finals next year.
There you go.
Everyone has something.
Hey, so you got a bold prediction before we get out of here?
Bold prediction.
For this division?
No, I think this division's gonna go pretty much bored, to be 100% honest with you. Like,
I think it'll be chalk.
I think it's gonna go chalk. Like I think I see this division as being pretty straightforward. The only thing that could possibly happen that surprises me is if Indiana wind up with one of the top 3 records in there. I just don't see that happening unless Ben Mathurin turns into Kobe Bryant. I don't see that happen.
Well, that would be the other obvious candidate, is that we're having a different kind of conversation about Mathurin if he really picks it up and proves himself. I still like Mathurin. I still have my Mathurin stock. I love his confidence. I think the way he plays is different than the rest of the Pacers, but I think they kind of need that. I think they need that kind of battering ram style type of player in what is otherwise sort of a finesse team. In terms of like at least the scheme. I don't want to call them a finesse team, but you know what I'm trying to say here.
So let me ask you guys a question about the Pacers. What do you think is more likely? Them finishing above the play-in, so top 6, or them finishing below the play-in, which would be bottom 5 in the East? Because I do likely. I do think there is a wide range of outcomes if Nembhard takes the leap in terms of conversation about him that Wes thinks might happen, if Ben Mathurin really does develop and takes hold of a bigger opportunity. Like there is a path for them to be good, not as good as they were last year, but there's a path for them to not be bad. But I also think there's a path for them to be bad.
I think I'd say it's more likely that they finish at the bottom, especially with them trading for their pick. Like I said, I worry about if Nembhard and Nesmith are going to stay healthy enough for the full season. And I'm still interested to see what that offense looks like without Tyrese Haliburton, because even when Haliburton wasn't scoring a lot, like he was still the engine of that offense. You lost that and Myles Turner. So I'd say more likely they finish towards the bottom than they avoid the play-in. But like you said, it's a wide range of possibilities there for them.
I'm kind of looking at it. Look, I'm not saying anything is impossible. I would almost say better chance that they end up in the top 6.
Wow.
Just because I'm looking at Cleveland, New York, Detroit, Orlando. I have like as almost sure things, right? Barring injury. Sure things that they'll finish in the top, like in the playoffs, outside the play-in. And then it's just sort of like a big mess of Milwaukee, Atlanta, Miami, Indiana, Boston, Toronto, Chicago. Like all these other teams are just sort of in there. So it could end up just being a couple of games that make the difference between being the 8th or 9th team in the play-in tournament versus like the 6th seed. I'm probably too high on the Pacers the more I'm talking to you guys, but I have no problem with this Pacers team. I think they're going to be really competitive. I think they're really well coached. I think there's going to be a part of them that wants to just say, we're without Haliburton, but damn it, we were in the finals last year. Like we all have something to prove, and these are a lot of guys who are still relatively young in their career. I think they're going to look at this opportunity to show themselves. Yeah, I don't know. Like again, it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up in the because they're the other part of this is they're a couple injuries away from just like total backslide. And when you lose an engine like Haliburton, that part of it doesn't get talked about enough. It's just like, well, that was our kind of whole identity, and now we don't have that anymore. But I still think there's enough of identity there and enough talent where I would just say if you like to Danny's question, if you had to ask me what was more likely, I just think this team's too competitive. I think that it's probably more likely that they finish in the top 6.
So you bring up their identity and things like that, which I cannot disagree with at all. Like they are a team that has a very distinct identity. Do you view them maybe a little bit higher? Because I do think that they might be a team that could kind of remind you of what the Miami Heat looked like pre-Jimmy Butler. They look like maybe a Heat culture team that doesn't have a star. Like as Bam is ascending, Tyler Hero's a young guy. They don't have the guy that they got in Jimmy Butler. They have a really, really good coach that everybody respects and thinks is one of the 5 best in the game.
You are probably hitting on something subconscious here. They look a lot
like those Miami Heat teams.
You're probably hitting on something subconscious here where I just buy in on these kinds of teams. But those are the kinds of teams that do win regular season games. Like they win games. Right. And I would push like Pascal Siakam is a legit. He's also one of the top 15 to 20 guys in the NBA. I mean, he was all NBA last year. Siakam's awesome, man. Like they've got guys. So I don't know. It's possible. Anything else before we get out of here, guys?
Not that I have. I think we covered, as Haize put it, the most boring good division in basketball as best we could.
Well, not the most boring guests. We had the best possible guests on to make the most boring division at least somewhat interesting. Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavaliers, Haize from Locked On Bulls, also Haize from the Locked On NBA Afternoon podcast, which is a great listen over there. Thanks, guys, for jumping on. Appreciate it.